Welcome to ESG Decoded, where we unravel the business complexities at the intersection of environmental, social, and governance issues.
I'm Erica Schiller, and I'm joined by my ClimeCo colleagues, Emma Cox and Anna Stablem.
Get ready to explore the intersection of sustainability, innovation, and ethical leadership, the dynamic forces shaping our global economy.
From climate action to social responsibility, we're here to decode the ESG landscape by interviewing interesting leading figures across the globe that will empower you with actionable insights.
Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or just embarking on your sustainability journey, this podcast is your compass for navigating the future of responsible business practices.
Let's decode ESG together.
Why does climate progress often feel stuck, even as urgency grows? In this episode of ESG Decoded, we examine how misaligned incentives and divided conversations are slowing real impact. Alexander Puutio and Bill Flederbach join me to discuss the role of markets, the power of consumer demand, and why better alignment, not louder debate, is key to advancing climate action. First, Dr. Alexander Puutio, leadership professor at Harvard, Columbia, and NYU Stern. He is also a Forbes Fast Company and Psychology Today contributor. His latest article with FEMA Cuts the Rapid Response Fund is Stepping Up, but Will It Be Enough? Offers timely insight into climate resilience in crisis-era funding. He also writes Panic is Not an Option, setting the tone for this episode's urgency and creativity. We also have our founder and CEO, Bill Flederbach, with us today. Bill brings deep experience in environmental markets, carbon credits, and driving product certification initiatives. He's also my boss. Welcome to the show, Alexander and Bill.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here.
Great to be here.
All right. Let's get started. So, Alexander, first of all, I'd love to just learn a little bit more about you. You have a unique background, and leading up to this recording, we joked that you're not just a writer, you're not just a reporter. You described yourself as a writer in the new age. You explore and you influence and you write. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy around, what makes you and how did you come to sort of be where you are today?
Oh, thank you. It's I'm still figuring the actual answer out, and I'll qualify that of all of those things that you listed, I'm the worst version of them. An adjunct professor, no one's put a ring on it. That's why how you get to teach at three of the world's best institutions at the same time, because that's how you put them together. You almost get a living. No, but I absolutely enjoy it. And at Harvard, kind of what got us here, I'm most involved in either leadership, executive education, which I try to take my past from the UN as much into account, having worked with the unders, the assistant, and the secretary general, and so bringing that lens into even if it's corporate America. And then I lead a couple of particular classes there on management and development, and the theory of development. So really going deep into the sustainability, the future of this world. How do you make that happen? How do we bring students into that conversation? And sometimes I bring kind of the cold hearth corporate truths to it, because I've also spent time at Boston Consulting Group. I run my own business, which helps corporations make more money. And if we can, do it by helping them do better by everyone, the triple bottom line, even better. And that's one of the reasons why I was so attracted to, Bill, in our first conversation, to say yes, wholeheartedly to this second session of our conversation, the continuation of the wonderful lunches. Like I see you and the the ClimeCo team do much of the same thing. And you're on the right side of history for good reasons, but there's no kind of being holier than thou. We only work with XYZ. We don't discuss malaria with mosquitoes approach. It's like, no, you do good work. You make the world a better place. And just in our yesterday's classes at Harvard, we spoke about transformations and how to make transformations happen. You have to make incremental change happen consistently. And so to wrap up, Emma, I think that's my life. I'm a work in progress in many ways. I know where I want to go, which is more writing, more thoughtful writing. I need to learn much more about the world, and I need to have many more of these conversations where we exchange big ideas and hopefully land at something better, so we can push those on others who are willing to listen and then make those incremental changes happen.
I love your perspective, Alexander, and what a worldly perspective you have created for yourself, it sounds like, and that has been a very purposeful journey in your life. So really, thank you for sharing that philosophy and that sort of journey that you've been on. And with that, I do want to just give our listeners a little bit of context around how did we three come together today. So, Alexander, you alluded a little bit to the first time you met Bill, but how did someone like Alexander meet and connect with someone like Bill?
I mean, I would say we had an amazing breakfast together, and I remember rushing over there and feeling a little bit panicked because I don't live in New York City, and I didn't take into account some of the traffic that morning. And I remember texting Alexander and saying I might be 5 minutes late. And when I walked into the breakfast, what was really amazing is that we just shared ideas. We talked about ourselves. We shared about our philosophies. There was no agenda. It was really breakfast with two guys that just met each other. Really enjoyable breakfast. So I think, Emma, our team sought out Alexander because we really enjoyed his pieces and his pragmatic approach, not being one-sided or the other, just addressing it as he saw it. And I think that's what attracted us to Alexander. So I think our team reached out to Alexander, and I was thankful enough that our team was able to do that, because I always say our team really makes ClimeCo and me really stand out. I didn't reach out to Alexander. I wasn't even sure how to contact him. But after the first breakfast, I thought, I want to hang with Alexander because I enjoyed it. I can learn from him. And I think we can create something special together, maybe by telling a couple stories that resonate with the market. So it was so enjoyable.
Likewise. And now I'll just, you can replay this, but we put AI on the voice instead of yours. Because, I treat sometimes, and if people from ClimeCo and elsewhere are listening, it's like the dating agency for me nowadays. So the best part, people sometimes ask, like, how do you find the time? Why do you find the time? Wouldn't it be better to focus on one thing? Like, absolutely not. I teach leaders, I work with leaders, and then people who work for leaders, Warren Buffett's team reached out last year to ask, would you want to write about what he's doing with the Power of One luncheon? Like, I wouldn't even know who to pay to do this. And same thing for you, Bill. Like, I would not have access to that breakfast where, as you said, the two guys can just sit down, and both of us, I think if I can diagnose you, Bill, a bit, I think we suffer from what's called need for cognition. It's like, just talking about, what we saw on Netflix or the Sunday game is not going to entertain us forever. Like, you'd rather dive in deep, and some people have the gift of doing it in 2 seconds when you smell it in the other person. And so, sometimes the PR agencies absolutely nail it. There's like, hey, here's someone for you to sit down with and conspire over great thoughts over. And I think we nailed it. And said, can't wait for the next one and to see. And now I guess we're absolutely overselling this episode. So we should, let's just talk about our Christmas plans and like the most surface things. There's no way we can live up to all this hype, Emma, for the rest of the episode. But let's see what we cook up here.
I love it. Alexander, no, I think it's great. The sort of marriage that happened from your breakfast meeting. It's interesting. We, as the sort of doers of the work and our interactions with reporters, which is one of your identities, we don't quite know how to approach it. And we hope that there will be a partnership there. But I can very much say, Alexander, we were so grateful in seeing that you were willing to partner with us. You were willing to sort of listen and to amplify what we believe is a really powerful story about impact. And so we're grateful to you for that. Now, with that, let's move into, again, one side of your identity, not your whole identity, but want to talk about what connected us, which is you did write an article recently, Alexander, with some wonderful quotes by our very own Bill. But let's dig into some of the sort of climate-related topics that you sometimes do cover in your writing, which is a shared interest of all of ours. So I want to ask you, Alexander, because this perspective is a unique one for this particular podcast. I would love to understand from you sort of how you select these topics to write about. As I mentioned, you have been known to cover climate-related topics in your articles, but really, how do you narrow it down to something that is both relevant and interesting and maybe even sometimes provocative? Tell us a little bit about your thought process.
Thank you. Yeah, there are like, I'd say, three main flavors that I mix in the kitchen for this. The first one is when Warren Buffett calls, you say yes, right? And when they next year they say, well, now Mark Benioff is doing it. Would you want to talk? It's like, yes, I would. And how do I do it? Which plane do I board on my own dime to make it happen tomorrow? So that's one bucket. But there's few of these, and I'll mention another one. We had Lady Lynn Rothschild and I connected on inclusive capitalism, right, which is a topic very close to my heart. You'll see me venture into this in my 60s. There's a grand plan of things I need to learn, and once I've learned enough, I'll tell what I've learned about great societies. And I think inclusivity in capitalism is one of these places that we need to be more versatile in terms of the jargon, the language, the understanding, and our capability to work. And that directly goes into what we're doing here. The sustainability to me, and this might irk some people here, is like, I just see it as part of society building. Like I know for good reason it's separated. We have our UNEPs, we have our COPs, sure, yes. But to me, it's under development, and development is under what I call social engineering. And so this gets me to the second part. Out of all of these reach outs that come to me, I really do a couple of things. I screen them first, say, like, first of all, is this an AI avatar? You need to do that. Nowadays, by the way, is like, is this company even real? Like, can I see the product when I walk to a store? Is this website, has it been in existence for more than 20 minutes? I actually get a lot of reporters who do their job much better than I do. They've gotten fooled, haven't they? Like they get impersonators saying, oh, well, I'm Bill Flederbach, and here's what I'd say about XYZ. Like, you have to be a bit careful. But so I do a bit of that wedding, and then I try to go, as said, with a provocative mind that I just can't turn off, into topics where I can't deal with the surface. I don't care. I don't need to write, which is a wonderful thing about being kind of a writer in the new age. Is I can drop a Medium post, I can go on LinkedIn, the TikTok where started, there's a podcast I'm filming. I can do any of those, or I can choose not to do any of them. And then, when the mind runs and you look at the world, well, hell, there's so much inconsistency in how we approach this world. On one hand, we say that we care about lives and we want to improve them. We care about them in our country, in other countries, whatever it is. And then on the other hand, we're sawing the branch we're sitting on, almost in the same sentence. So, like, my mind, there's a million topics constantly going as I observe, specifically being a foreigner in the US. There's like, oh my goodness, this is what the Americans are up to. And there's 100, 200 different topics that at any point could coalesce into a piece. And so that's kind of the second brand. And then the third flavor is, well, look, I just know that I need to do it. Like, there's a thing that I just, for whatever reason, sometimes it's very self-serving. I've had a wonderful conversation, and to do it justice, I need to learn a thing. One of these examples is, the creator economy, right? So it has nothing to do with many of the other topics. So I cover leadership and its many angles. But at one point, I just had this series of wonderful conversations about what the creator economy, the influencer economy looks like. And so, then that haunted me for 8 months. Like, we talked all the way to the VPs of TikTok and to everyone, including people on OnlyFans, right? Like, I connected with people who are, living on the other side of influence, for me to understand what the hell is happening in this industry, and then to kind of explain it to myself. So those are kind of sometimes I just hunt a thing because it haunts me. I land often in sustainability. It's, I have a set of background or baggage from the UN. And so I care about these things. I'm not a bleeding heart by any means. That's not who I am as a person. But, I do care about making a better world for our kids. And it's just, I think if we're on this planet to do one thing, let's continue the Ponzi scheme of life and, give the next generation who is, forced into it, the best possible start. And so, I have to cover these topics just to do justice to where my brain is. And then sometimes people like Bill come along, is like, oh, hell, like, you just nailed 15 different thoughts that I've had. You said it better. You provocated another thought. And now I know 5 other people I need to talk to, which is why, if someone's on the PR side has ever worked with me, it takes me 8 months to come back with a draft. But this is the process, Emma, that you asked. So it's madness, but, something comes out of it.
It's fascinating, Alexander, to understand the process a bit more the way you describe it. I think the thing that I got from what you just described is a lot of it is driven by your own personal interests and values, which I think is beautiful. So, that said, Bill, I'd love to come to you. And as the CEO of ClimeCo, how do you really think about sort of the opportunities and the challenges when it comes to really telling our climate story and the impact that we're making?
Yeah, great question. And I love the Alexander, you say provocative because I think we spoke about provocative topics right away, like over the first cup of coffee, whether or not it was ClimeCo's belief in the importance of how we apply diversity, equity, inclusion, and where it can go wrong if applied incorrectly, right? So when we were talking about it, I knew I was with somebody that I could just openly share. So I dove right in and we started talking about how I believe the markets are so important to create change, capitalism, put a price on something and get somebody should be paid to do the right thing because it's really important. And I think where I've always struggled, Emma, is almost like a fear of having a journalist, and Alexander certainly wasn't in this category, of taking something the wrong way and just spinning it because they had an idea that they wanted to prove, right? And I think one of the examples that I would say, we were working with a reporting agency that heard some of our actions in China where we're doing amazing things. We have 45 million tons a year under contract for abatement because we're applying market-based solutions. And I remember that this one journalist said in an article that they didn't believe that there should be a market for this. They believe that all those companies should do it because it's the right thing to do. And if I had hair, I would have pulled it out because I said, you're living in a world that's not reality. That's never going to happen unless we put a price on that and make a market around it. Change isn't going to occur. Now, with that journalist, actually, I believed in a lot of their pieces, though, in the past. They were kind of pro-industry in some ways. So I continued to spend time with this journalist. And then ultimately, they did see the importance of what we were doing. And I thought that was actually a creative opportunity for me to work with somebody because I did like their point of view on other topics, but I just couldn't get around their disbelief in the importance of market-based solutions. So I think one of the fears that I have sometimes, and not to overly stereotype or categorize, but when you think of liberal and conservatives, where have we done well as a firm? It's walking in the middle. It's working with both sides. It's communicating to MAGA in a way that resonates. It's all of our projects are in red states because we've always spoke about a strategy, a business strategy. And if you believe in climate change, phenomenal. That's great because I do. I'm a climate scientist as a base, but you don't have to. What you really have to believe in is it a great business strategy? And I think some of the journalists that I get in some of the magazines that I get really nervous about because they just want to kill everything that's progress because they don't believe in a mechanism or they don't believe in a carbon credit. Now, I can also say that there are some, I've worked with amazing journalists that really have vetted issues. There are issues in our program. There are issues in the markets. There are bad actors. There are bad projects, and I think that the journalists play a really important role. But it's trying to find the journalists that I would enjoy having a lunch or breakfast or dinner with, right? That we can share ideas openly and we trust each other. And we see what comes out of it. And I remember after we left that breakfast, Alexander didn't realize this, but I forgot my wallet. So I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay for breakfast. So once you left, I was really happy they took Apple Pay because I was stressed out. I thought I was going to wash dishes there. But I remember our conversation went so well. And Alexander, you said, give it time. Let me ruminate on this a little bit. I think there's something here. And it was really enjoyable to see the piece. But I have the little trepidation sometimes when I'm sitting down with a journalist because I don't know what their angle was. But it was clearly, we had commonality, Alexander and myself.
Yeah. No, and that's the, I'd say like the cultural background coming from Finland, for us, governance, political parties look very different. The far right talks to the far left. And, you take both to school. You can take them to task. You can teach them. Everyone understands that, there's a conversation to be had. And people are generally interested in the data, if not just, only the opinion of someone. Like there's a broad stereotype that I'll put on my countrymen and women here. But, there's a conversational style that then as you apply it, when I do put in on the mask of, well, let's go and investigate a thing, that I think just lends itself to great conversations. Because if I write about a company, I'm not endorsing it. Like, it's not well, look, yes, you gave me, I think it was a granola yogurt and a decaf latte, so that's $25. And that's well within Forbes is $100, just to add. And I did try to pay myself, but you did say that you didn't mention the wallet missing at that point. But so look, like that's not going to corrupt me either way. And in fact, there are many, many, many hundreds of conversations that didn't lead to anything, because like there's just no substance for me to speak of. And if that substance isn't something I like, it doesn't mean that I wouldn't write about it. I'd be actually much more interested. If you think about it, I run this with some of my students often. Like you start running numbers on the board, and it's always one number bigger. But what they don't notice is I start with 0 and then I go to 2. And so most people miss that. And then you just put like 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you put like infinity plus 1. And you ask, like, how many of you know what rule this is? Right. And everyone's like, yes, yes, I got it. You're wasting my time. And then you really ask, but okay, so what is it? It's plus 1. Except the first one was from 0 to 2. And so that's the point. I remember when someone did this to me, years ago. I was like, you should always be looking for that one thing that invalidates you, right? Because like it didn't help at all when I added infinity plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. You get it now? I was like, yes, 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 I get it. And none of them were looking for that one thing, the first thing I put on, which invalidates their number. But because the preponderance of evidence is on that side, everyone's super thrilled with their initial guess being validated even further. And so like, I gravitate to conversations and to write with people who are exact opposites of each other. If that's a gift I can give myself or others, to show that, well, here's two people. I have a podcast coming up where I have one big company CEO who is a full blown RTO, like everyone to the office. I can't believe you even think you could work outside. And then I have Stefan Mayer from Columbia Business School who's like, look, like, you just trust your people. The employees are the advantage here. Like, let them work from the surface of the moon. As you need to be intentional about the RTO. And neither one of those will know or need to know what my real thoughts on this are. And do I even know what my real thoughts are until I've really listened to both sides? So then let's adapt this to climate. We had Joe Rogan on a couple of weeks ago where he invited two climate scientists who say that we're overblowing carbon counting, right? I'm not sure if you listened to it. It was a hard listen for me because, like, all right, well, this is part of it is like conspiracy theory. But at the same time, these guys have been at Harvard, MIT for like longer than I've been alive, and they say that this is what's happening from their perspective. It's like, I better listen. I don't need to adopt their viewpoint, but I better at least listen to what someone else is thinking. Is maybe that's the 0 to 2, right? Maybe that's the thing that improves my own guess of a thing.
Wow. Yeah, Alexander, I think you so beautifully tied all of this together. And I just want to repeat one thing that you said that I think is a really important message, which you said you should always be looking for the thing that invalidates you. And that is something I think we as a society, especially in this work that we do, that Bill and I work on every day with climate, in terms of finding common ground and convincing folks that this is sort of, the right kind of impact to be making. So thank you for that message. It's a really powerful one. So I want to pivot a little bit to, and maybe this is a nice segue into what's happening in journalism right now. And we're going to try and bring it back to what's interesting to our listeners around ESG and climate. So, I want to understand from you, Alexander, having been in this industry for many years, how have you seen it sort of evolve in recent years, and maybe more specifically this year in the United States? Do you think that media is incentivized to be divisive? Is this sort of what's happening in the US right now? And let's think about that in some of the context of climate.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Emma. Nothing I'm going to say is new or original or shocking, but just to validate what others are seeing, and maybe I can add something from the back end that others don't see, which influences much of the thinking. But so let's just think of, you show me the incentive, I'll show you the result, right? So what is the incentive? What constitutes an incentive today is, let's say you're a journalist and you're lucky to be one, right? Because many people are fired. I'll tell you, like, this year with one of my favorite outlets. It took me 8 months to get a pre-written thing posted because the editor left 3 times. I was working with my 4th editor by the end of it. And I loved all of them, right? It's like, these are great people. I would work for most of them. Lydia, if you're listening to this, you're awesome. Everyone loves you. We all do, right? But when they hand over, there's a handover, there's a handover, there's a handover. So, Emma, like, what's happening to the industry? Well, some parts are being decimated. The journalism part of it is getting decimated just because what constitutes incentives nowadays? There's ad revenue. Google, is also struggling with this now with AI, doing more of the taking something that exists and summarizing it inside of a ChatGPT box or a Gemini or a Claude box. Like, that's happening everywhere. And so the original writing no longer even attracts the ad revenue, which already was a problem, right? So that led to the enshittification of the internet, right? Where, these websites that were proud to relay information. If you remember the time of GeoCities and these like websites that we used to do as young millennials, kids, well, you were just putting stuff out there. You were vlogging, you were blogging, you were putting stuff out there. But so then the incentive has become to make money with this, and there are not that many ways to make money that are consistent with telling nuanced stories. No one wants nuance, so that is the big problem. Like, nuance is killed. It's like, hey, Americans all agree that something could be done better. No one cares. You find that one outlier somewhere, and we say, like, you can look at Trump as one of these outliers who's spoken to a captivated audience. Here in New York, Mamdani does the exact same thing. Free X, free Y. Is like, look, my second PhD is in economics. Let me sit with your transition team for a moment to tell you why you're in a world of hurt and trouble if you try to pull off any of these. Right? I'm not, like, you're in trouble because you promised something you can't deliver, because it's really hard to deliver this stuff. And that's it. It's ironic because you could say this to the White House administration or here to the mayor's office, and they're polar opposites of the conversation. So something's wrong with the conversation, right? Because the real chat you should be having is, it is really tough to be alive in the US right now. Everything is expensive. Everyone's getting fired, decimated. Everything's uncertain. Flourishing is down. The U curve of happiness has turned into a slope where people start unhappy and they keep unhappy. Like, every metric we care about, people aren't having kids because they don't want to bring another generation into this mess. And so, like, there's so many, like, for journalists and for all of us, like, there are better conversations we could have. And that's why you get, you get elated when you find someone or a few people who are willing to stay on a podcast for 30 minutes and just kind of think of, like, okay, what's actually the conversation worth having? And so what I like to summarize, you asked, like, what's happening with journalism and media, the Flanderization of it, right? Like, it is getting, you take a rich third dimension, full view of the world, and you make it into a rasterized 2 version, like, if from Simpsons, Flanders, right? Like, the story of the character was very nuanced in the beginning, and 20 years later, he's an annoying Christian neighbor who's just better than Homer, right? Because you get known for something, you get into a niche, you become creating, like, and even here, like, it's ESG Decoded. What if we wanted to talk about something else? Right. So it's going to be hard for you to pivot this very successful podcast into something in 5-10 years. And so we lock ourselves into this because of the algorithm, because of what customers want. They are not used for nuance. And I said we could go into deep places, including, Charlie Kirk, and many of these places where our ability to just listen to someone we think is an asshole has gone down the drain. Like, we can't even listen when someone we disagree with. And so, look, like, I'll have to stop there because otherwise I'm going to rant forever. But Bill, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, just to continue the convo we started a couple of months ago.
Yeah, Emma, let me take that from there. And I, one of the things that I was thinking about, where we are today, and if I related it over to climate too, and I have 3 words in my mind. I have the federal, I have CEO or the private sector, and then I have people. And I want to say why I look at it in these 3 ways. So years ago, under I call it Trump Take One, there was a wait for the federal leadership under the Obama administration to do something with climate. And that waiting for federal leadership caused a lot of wait and see. Nobody wanted to take action because they thought there was going to be a federal program. And then when Trump Take One came, what we saw it was clear. The message was clear. It's binary now. We're coming out of the Paris Agreement and there's going to be no federal guidance. So then the CEOs picked up. The CEOs picked up where the federal government left off. And that was Trump Take One. And we saw some of the strongest years of of activity around mitigating carbon emissions across the globe, certainly in the United States during Trump Take One. What I'm seeing that's different now is with the divisiveness is in Trump Take Two, it's not the companies that stood up right away. In fact, the companies and a lot of CEOs put their head down. Getting back to Alexander's work with leading universities, I was with a president of a university last night at an event and yesterday at an event. I mean, he came right out and said, we're doing a lot of the same things, but we're just keeping our head down. We just don't want to get hit. And I found that unfortunate in many ways, but also understandable because I certainly don't have his shareholder base. So we can put our heads up a little bit more as a smaller company because I don't really care, what the administration thinks of ClimeCo. We're going to continue to do the right thing. But I think when the CEOs put their head down, what did we see next, Emma? We saw people put their head up. It's the individuals then that said, well, wait a second. I want to buy responsible. I want to start being more sustainable. I feel like I need to empower myself because I'm feeling so powerless when I'm surrounded by folks that say science doesn't exist, it's not real. So when the people stood up, then it kind of reversed back to the companies and the CEOs. So when the people stood up, and I'm sure you read some of the studies, Alexander, about the Harvard Business Journal talking about how buyer sentiment is up for sustainable products they really validated some of the work done by Amazon Climate Pledge is that there's on average at least a 13% revenue lift if you're creating a sustainable product, right? So what's happening there? The people are speaking. They're creating that lift. Emma and I were recently with Amazon Climate Pledge, and they presented some data that there's $1.7 billion of accretive spend on that platform because the people are speaking. So when the people speak, then it goes back to the CEOs. So then I go to the CEOs, and we're working with CEOs that are saying the people are speaking. We want a sustainable product. How do we do it? But let's do it, but not necessarily bring our head up and tell the world we're doing it, but let's do it because the consumer demand is there. So I think there's always different forces that create change. And certainly we're seeing that now live and in color is that, the brand facing work that we're doing is driving and asking for, how do we decarbonize? How do we focus on our footprint? Because we know that that's going to create accretive revenue for us and create shareholder value. So I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed more recently is listening to folks talk about, to Alexander's point, how do we communicate with all sides? And, in a small example, and I really took this to heart. I was talking to somebody that led an ad agency back in Wisconsin many years ago, and it had to do with coal plants and some of the toxicities around coal consumption. And nobody in Minnesota wanted to do anything about it. It felt like an environmentalist thing until they really brought it home to the folks in Minnesota because, they all love to walleye fish. So what the ad campaign did years ago is they started to show sick walleye. As you drove down the highways on the advertisements on the billboards, you saw a sick walleye. So instead of it being an environmental issue, it became a real practical issue to the hunter and fishermen in the community. And then they realized they needed to wake up and make a change. So I think it's how we communicate. It's, let's not be divisive on the terms. Let's be more pragmatic and let's talk about, what this world could look like for your children or for the next generation. We all care about health and well-being of our kids, right? So I think that's where it's enjoyable for me to look at ways to communicate differently. But right now, it's the people that are driving change, that are going back to the industry.
This is really interesting, Bill, because I want to sort of bring us back full circle to something Alexander said earlier, which is one of his interests is in inclusive capitalism. And Bill, what you just described in terms of consumers speaking with their wallets and signaling to the corporations that they would prefer to buy a sustainably badged product, is the common ground there that we're talking about, is that capitalism? Is it that we're all sort of aligned that, businesses should make more money and we can also do it by being sustainable? Is that the common ground?
Yeah. Well, again, coming off the socialist victory here in New York, I think the sound bite version is not aligned, right? And it's easy to mock people that you all are aligned with otherwise, but who just lapsed into a dumb idea. And just I like to remind myself and everyone else that, hopefully today we're the dumbest version of ourselves ever, right? Like hopefully in 10 years, you'd look back and say, didn't we have the dumbest ideas on this podcast, right? Let's do a new one because I've improved. A lot of people have not thought that through. And so, this idea of building on this, like I think the whichever side, whatever party, whatever ideology you go into, you better have the best ideas. Right? You better be in an environment where you're bringing your A game when we're talking about as big of an issue as social engineering of society. What does New York, what does the US, what does the globe look like? You can't just go based on, well, here's 5 of my favorite scientists. Here's a paper that may or may not get redacted. Let's build a broader consensus. Let's test things out, and ideally build on what has been done before. And so then, kind of this, well, what the markets as a solution. If it was Churchill that said democracy is the worst form of government beyond everything else that was tried, right? So we could absolutely say the same about capitalism. Good luck trying anything else in a world where humans respond to incentives, right? We've evolved over millennia in a scarcity situation where we hoard things. I this is one of my favorite ways to jog some people is like, well, do you collect money? Right? Because like, no, I don't, but you do, right? Like, so some people go into collecting money as you actually take foreign currencies, but we are all money collectors. There's something in our monkey OS, like the thing whatever we inherited from our ancestors, that creates a certain set of incentive-seeking, incentive-responsive mechanisms that even the hardest socialists, Marxists, capitalists, whoever you are, wherever you are, that is just the blueprint of most of humanity. And so then good luck trying to get desired outcomes without working through an incentive system. And if you work through an incentive system, you're in capitalism version something, right? And so you could be in a shitty world where capitalism, gives $1 trillion to Elon Musk now, right? That's one version of this. Or we could enforce another version of capitalism, which is a bit more inclusive. And it says, hey, CEOs, sorry, Bill, don't need to make 250 times the average salary, right? We could decide that. The Democrats, if and I assume many of us are on the left of things, the Blue Party could have decided this and made it into law decades ago. They could do it the next time they hold all parties. They could say, look, CEOs make 150 times max. The janitor, let's stop fiddling around with this idea that, hey, let's distribute wealth. Let's make it per company. There's so many things we could do to make capitalism inclusive. So instead of just saying, I'm going to go with socialism, go ask a Cuban how they feel when they land in Florida. Talk to someone. One of the benefits of having worked at the UN and traveled is it gives you a little bit of humility and perspective, is that everyone hates their government everywhere, right? And if they say they like it, they're lying, or they're temporarily pleased until someone else takes over, right? And so on the long run, we all gripe about Finland is 8-time back-to-back happiest country on the planet. Go ask a Finn how happy they are. They'll have no idea what you're talking about. They're very content with their life. They're satisfied. The basics are good. No one makes 1 million times more. The biggest yacht you can find is only 5 times bigger than what you could maybe afford. Healthcare is accessible, to the point where it's free. It's not accessible as people would like there, but compared to the US, it's absolutely out there. So Emma, this idea of what are we actually griping about is, I think the common ground there is shit is bad at this point. To use Gen Z language, it's not great. We're cooked in many ways. That's a common ground. And I just don't see beyond a market or some type of version that builds on humanity's incentives and responsiveness there too. Good luck fixing it. There's just no AI on this planet that can run a big government that allocates activity appropriately to get this done. So, if we want to fight the climate fight, it has to be market-based, as well as government supporting it, sure, regulation, all of it. But if you take out the government the market, good luck for any government to try to do even half of what the market would do with the right incentives and guardrails on its own.
What a powerful message, I think, to sort of start to wrap up our conversation with, Alexander. Thank you so much for that. Now, if you wouldn't mind, humor me. We are to the rapid fire question segment of this podcast. Are you ready to participate, Bill and Alexander?
Ready to go.
Oh yeah, we're ready.
Okay. What is one leadership trait that matters most for building a sustainable company? Let's go, Bill and Alexander.
I would say that stay the course. Shareholder value isn't created overnight, nor is it destroyed overnight. So be patient and do the right thing. But while you're thinking macro, act micro. So don't be blind to what's happening, but stay the course as well.
Yeah. And I'll say productive delusions. So the more I talk to leaders and CEOs and founders, specifically in this field, you have to be delusional because what you want to accomplish, you see no direct path to it. You might have a series of stepping stones ultimately that take you there, but you have to be delusional. You have to envision it before anyone else sees it. You have to hallucinate the way. And then once you've laid the stones, you're there and everyone else gets it. But you're the only one who gets it until you've done it.
I can relate to that. Thank you, Alexander. What gives you optimism right now about the climate movement? Let's go Alexander and then Bill.
Yeah, I'll say the students I see on the undergrad level, like even the cold-hearted MBA students and the finance bros in Wall Street, they care in ways that just not what would have been entirely atypical 40, 50, 10 years ago. And so even the hardcore, the youth that's coming, you take them from as right as you can, this language of just caring about the environment, the world, the planet, humans, that's working. Like it's seeping through. It's seeping through. I can see it.
And I'd mirror that one. I think of people. I spoke a lot about the people driving the demand for sustainable products. I'm hearing it spoken more at individual levels now than I have in some time. So that's what really gives me the optimism is some of the data that we're seeing, but just the conversations that we're having is people are making the difference right now.
I love it. Lots of optimism to be had. All right. What is one win, big or small, that made you feel proud this year? Let's go Bill and then Alexander.
I'm going to say it all starts with people. We just had a team builder, one of our annual team builders where we bring the globe into one location. This year we picked Philadelphia. And I think the one thing that makes me the most proud is our team and our people. We're built for this. We're built to succeed in chaotic times like this. We can hallucinate, as Alexander said, with the vision of where we know we need to go. So I think we've got the team in place, and the people are in the right seats on the bus. And so I'm really excited about what lies ahead for us. And I think just when I think of big project expansions, I think of the impact that we're making in Asia, with millions and millions of tons under abatement. So that's pretty cool.
Wonderful. Well, I'll take this personal. All of the three boys are still alive, which isn't a given. And so, as parents, we've made it thus far and hope to make it further. And then, for anyone who's listening, there's more of this. There's a Substack. There's a book deal we signed with Penguin, and so that to me is the kind of you're seeing a midlife crisis unfold. As Bill knows, like this is it. Thinking more broadly in public and hopefully, changing a couple of minds about how to approach things like ESG while we're at it. So I'll make it very self-promotional here. But that to me it's been hard because, I've, again, coming from Finland and from the UN system, you're not supposed to make it about yourself. You're supposed to make it about the thoughts. And, now gently coming into this area where, look, well, let's just have these conversations with our own name signed under it and see what happens. So that to me has been a big accomplishment thus far.
I love it. Okay, next question, and we'll do this as our last one. So if you could make one phone call to change ESG or climate forever, who are you calling? Let's go Alexander first.
Yeah. So I'll have to subvert and judo flop your question very gently. I'd love to call everyone who is listening, and I would need to call everyone who says they'd never listen to an ESG Decoded podcast, right? And I would do more listening than talking. But I rail against the idea of big men in history, which is a concept where Churchill or even Trump or Obama with their bare hands change the course. But when you've been very close to leadership, you know that there's a million things whispering in the ear. And the future we need to happen has to be broadly sourced. These beliefs, they have to be tested. We have to get better beliefs. We have to have more nuance in it. And I need to listen more. People need to get into the act of talking more. So that one phone call Emma, if you allow me to multiply that with everyone who isn't listening, which I guess takes us to 8 billion somehow. So, let's see if I ever pull that off. But that's what I think would be needed to really change this forever. And we can do variations of it, make people feel heard. I think that's what I'd love to do.
Bill, what about you?
Yeah, it's the one call that I really struggle with. When I think of the one call, I come back to, and I don't really care who your higher power is, whether or not it's the Milky Way or tree or God, but it's my higher power. And I may look up at the Milky Way one night and say, my God, please let everybody just believe science. Can't we just put a price on carbon and really make an impact now? Our children's lives depend on it in the future generations, not ours. I mean, we're going to have to deal with climate resiliency. We already have to. It's now. We have to prepare for what's ahead of us. The curve's already started. But in the future, if we wake up, can we make a difference for the future generations? But yeah, it's my higher power. And I don't care who's your higher power. It could be anything. That's who I'm calling.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for helping us to end on a really positive note, Bill and Alexander. I heard today a lot about inclusive capitalism. We learned to have better conversations. We learned that you should always be looking for the thing that invalidates you. So many really powerful messages that you both have shared with our listeners today, and I hope that our listeners are feeling inspired. So thank you so much both for being here. Alexander, I would love for you to share a little bit about how our listeners can find you.
Yes, there's a website, alexanderpuutio.com. There's whatever variation you got out of this. Finnish last names are hard. LinkedIn will take you there. Google will find you. Substack would love to see you there thinking in public. That's where the provocative thinking that I can't push on Forbes or other places lives. So can't wait to see you there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to ESG Decoded. We hope this episode has inspired you to take action in your own ESG journey, stimulating ideas for partnership and innovation.
New episodes drop bi-weekly on Tuesday morning. Subscribe now on your favorite streaming platform to stay in the loop.
Join the conversation on social media using @ESG Decoded or visit ClimeCo.com for more resources.
Until next time, keep decoding, keep innovating, and keep making a positive impact.